I naturally think RPG because it's a
Right.
very epic genre.
Well, there's a certain element where you're getting something from the gameplay, like you're going through a long dungeon or a hard series of puzzles, and then you get something in reward of that. You know, you fight a boss and you get some kind of nice cinematic.
Okay.
You take the case of Xenosaga, where it's almost 2 hours before you can do anything.
Wow.
You know, it's like very, very little that you can actually do in game in terms of playing it.
Okay.
And you're just watching it. And at that point, you might as well just watch a movie.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's totally non-interactive.
Yeah, just for the very, very, like, you'll watch a cutscene and then you just go to the next area, not to facilitate the gameplay, but to get to the next cutscene.
Interesting.
And, you know, ad nauseum, there was a little bit of a backlash of
Gotcha.
it. So now I think especially now that the game systems are more powerful, are not taking time away from the game with cutscenes and F&B sequences, but actually interacting with the environments using real-time graphics.
Real-time's a big difference.
Yeah.
Real-time is... I know that the Mass Effect... I don't know if you have a 360 as well.
I never play it, though, so...
I haven't played the Mass Effect, but I know that you're right to point out the difference, the important distinction between the machine's abilities to properly run cinematography, essentially.
Right.
And I know that some of that stuff, like, I didn't know could really be done real time. I mean, I've seen the Call of Duty 4 as well. We're in a whole new league of storytelling. It's not just RPGs anymore.
Right.
Because it used to be. You remember games back in the day. I mean, you had people like me, and that's one of the, we've talked about Sega and Nintendo before. One of the big reasons I think Sega players are Sega players to the core, and Nintendo players are Nintendo players to the core, is because they focus on different things. Sega's always, what are your hands doing? Nintendo tends to be, what is your brain doing? You know, and so they shift this way. And it looks like because RPGs really in the States got a foothold on the Super Nintendo, and later the PS1 really brought it to Mass Effect. But I would say, certainly, yeah, everyone's like, he did that. Oh, he did that. I had to. But, you know, the question, I guess, for me is, do these... it's gotten really popular, and I know everyone likes these long story-driven games, even if it's a racing game. People love the story.
Everything has RPG elements now.
It's
everything.
true.
Boxing, racing, everything.
Upgrading is a huge thing. What game do you think really, barring the obvious ones, what game do you think, if there is one, really has gained mass appeal, probably sold well, but maybe not, but at least was critically acclaimed, that really bridged RPG and action best? I know that that's Mass Effect's goal. And before it, Jade Empire. That was its goal. Same company.
Yeah. Well, there's a problem with that. That's BioWare, isn't it?
Correct. They're both. Right.
The problem is the way they cater their games. It's very Western. You know, it's almost as though they want to market the PC gamer playing a console game.
Yeah, I think you're right in a lot of ways.
Even though, you know, their games seem to be okay and fine and whatnot, it's still a very limited market. So, like Mass Effect, you're the only person I know who owns the game.
Really?
You know, so I mean, everybody else with their 360 is still too busy with their Halos and their Bioshocks and whatnot.
Yeah, sure.
So it's one of those things, like, no matter how popular or well received a game can be, it's still going to be a very limited market, especially when you focus your game like that. Because even, you know, Eastern style RPGs, your Final Fantasy of the world, there's still a huge market that never played those either.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 7, a lot of people, I remember when Final Fantasy came out, you know, it was on the back of Rolling Stone. You know,
really?
Yeah, that was a commercial on MTV.
I do remember that.
It was a hell of a marketing push on this thing, you know?
Yeah,
so a lot of people they picked it up thinking they were going to get what they saw, and then it was just like, what the hell is this?
And that's a big one.
I blame Sony for a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps so. Now, I mean, does that still get it worked?
Yeah, it worked.
I mean, it worked. Did you guys feel like suckers when you got the product?
No, I mean, we know
we're
what
probably
we're getting into. We know what we're getting into.
As gamers, we knew it was probably up.
But I know a couple of my friends, you know, they were more, at the time, it would be Tekken 2 and, you know, your police knots. Well, not police knots, I'm sorry.
I was going to say,
G
whoa.
Police.
Yeah.
G-Police, I'm sorry.
I mean, awesome, but,
Yeah,
I mean, that's like one guy on the planet.
Again, you know, but they were into different types of game. I get Final Fantasy 7. A friend of mine comes over. He was like, "You got Final Fantasy 7?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I want to check it out." I was like, "Really?"
Yeah, right.
And
right.
You know, he plays it. He's like, "Whoa, wait, what is this? This is a lie."
Yeah,
it's a lie, and he didn't want to play it anymore.
Well, that touches on. Did you have something to include?
Well, I was just say that sort of what you were talking about earlier with the way that the cinematics progress to a certain point, and there's a big backlash against them. Part of that, in my opinion, is that, you know, the FMV sequence, I think, simultaneously put games in a lot of homes, but it also delayed the development of like the type of games we're seeing now by a good 5-10 years.
Huh.
Because the whole thing was once like Final Fantasy VII came out and they said, gee, we made millions and millions of dollars off this. The whole Me Too game thing turned every single RPG that came out for the next 5 years into a 3D sort of game, basically 3D characters moving on a pre-drawn 2D map.
Yeah.
All those pre-rendered graphics don't stand up well after a few years.
They don't. Yeah. They don't.
And I think that is actually probably what delayed the use of real-time graphics as an engine.
Perhaps. I maybe so. I think you're right to say so, keeping in mind that they could have been pulled off with 2D sprites.
Yeah.
The cinematics
they
could be.
I mean, if you really look at like some of the more epic scenes of say Final Fantasy VI.
Okay,
you know, like
which is 3 here, right?
Right, it's 3 here. Well, I think it's been amended.
Yeah, you're right.
But either way, like the opera scene, for example, right?
Amazing.
But it's basically a cutscene. It's basically a cutscene.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just a cutscene using Ingrid graphics, you know, and they're just, I guess we're coming back around full circle.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess it was just a natural progression of things.
Yeah. I think that they did a good job regarding, because when we speak of the full motion video thing, there is no way I can keep the years 1994 to 1997 out of my head.
Yeah.
Those were years where like that whole thing that do you know what we mean by FMV or full motion video? It's this thing. Basically, imagine we have our setup here. Okay, this is literally what it is. If I were a game designer and I want to do full motion video, we have our setup, right? We have our cameras here. And I would be like, well, I want people to play this experience. It's like you're in the conversation. So imagine going to Best Buy, flipping open the back of the box, and you read, what does this game provide for me? You look at it, and it's like, be the guy on the right. Be the guy over here, as he says. You know, and the idea is taking part in something that is so prefab as to require footage.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you boil down, and this again was after the Nintendo, the Genesis, the Super Nintendo. I mean, it's the new age of CD, man. I always picture it. I always picture it. CD, man.